event. We're at CollegeFrog out of Florida, and we are part of the organizers of this event. CPAexcel, who you're going to hear from momentarily, is our co-sponsor, national co-sponsor, and we appreciate everything that they've done in putting this event together. We also, our other sponsors are Deloitte, Boomer Consulting, the Association for Accounting Administration, Sage Software, the Accounting and Financial Women's Alliance, Accounting Today, Innovatus Consulting, the Public Accounting Report, Intuitive Accountant, and the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, USA. So how does Meet the Firms Week work? So essentially, many of you have already built a profile on CollegeFrog. You can, if you haven't already, just go to meetthefirmsweek.com and you can build your profile. And a couple of things are going to happen this week. First, you'll be able to attend these webinars. And at CollegeFrog, our mission is to help students like you understand all of their career opportunities and the career options available to them. And so there's going to be sessions like today. We're going to talk about why you should be taking the CPA exam and how to prep for that. But also be sure to make tomorrow's session on how do you know if you're a good fit for the Big Four. And the next day, why should you start your career in a mid-market firm. On Thursday, we're going to have why should you start your career at a corporation in-house. And then Friday, we're going to wrap it up with UHY is going to talk about insider tips and tricks on the job search. These are all fantastic sessions, and we really appreciate our speakers who are going to be help spreading this information and giving you great advice on how to pick a career. I want to thank the team that put together the events, including Bryant Chase on our team, who's the National Director of Meet the Firms Week. Did a fantastic job. Many of you have probably already built your profile on CollegeFrog. If you have not, I told you where you can go. Just start at meetthefirmsweek.com and get started. We have had a tremendous response from students. I think we had nearly 2,000 in the last 48 hours sign up, so it's been a really great response. Because of the traffic, the site's been a little bit slow. It's been slow for some people, and so bear with us. We're working through those. If you have any problems, just let us know. We'll get it fixed for you. All right. So, and last thing, be sure to like us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/CollegeFrog, and we put out a lot of information about our employers, career search advice and tips, special offers from sponsors like CPAexcel. You don't want to miss out on that. You know the questions tab. That's how you ask the questions. I hope you'll take advantage of that during the session. And let's see, that's probably it. So what I hope is if you have any questions on Meet the Firms Week or on the presentation that you'll use that question bar to ask questions. Really excited about today's presentation, CPAexcel, Mike Duffy. Let me tell you a little bit about Mike. Mike's a CPA. He's a Senior Vice President of CPAexcel, the CPA Review, where he's responsible for the product and business development for their CPA Review products. Mike started his career at PwC in their audit practice after graduating from Western Illinois University. So he got a BBA there from accounting, and like I said earlier, he's a certified public accountant. Before he joined CPAexcel, Mike was the National Program Director at Convisor Duffy CPA Review for 15 years and the Director of Marketing for Becker Convisor at their CPA Review for 5 years. Mike currently serves on the Beta Alpha Psi Advisory Forum and the Western Illinois University Advisory Board, and he lives in San Diego. I wish we could all be so lucky, Mike. Mike, we thank you so much for this session. We are thrilled to be kicking off National Meet the Firms Week with you and this outstanding audience on the phone today. So, Mike, it's all yours, and thanks again, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Jeff. I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to chatting with all of you about some of the key areas that I look at when I look at the CPA exam, and I also look at your careers in accounting. Boy, a long time ago, I sat there one day and my results came in the mail. And lo and behold, my brother opened it up and found out I passed. So he gave me a call and said, hey, Mike Duffy, CPA. I tell you, that day was one of the most exciting days. First off, you were worth more money, and also you actually felt right enough to practice as an accountant. So when I arrived home that day, my brother had a big garbage can out in the middle of the living room, and it said CPA exam garbage can, all of my books, everything was dumped in there. And it is just not only a great day for you, but it's a great day for all of your friends and family members who share in the excitement of you passing that test. So I've spent 25 years working in this arena after my stint in public accounting. And it really is a pleasure to help students over the years with the development of software and other tools to get this exam behind them and get moving on with their career. So with that today, I'd like to talk about a couple of things. First off, talking about should you take the exam. I'm going to talk about something called the plan and hopefully give you some guidance not only in your preparation for the exam, but literally in life. We're going to talk about the strategies on exam sequencing, what parts to take first, talk about some key test-taking strategies, because with all major tests, there are certain strategies that can bode very well in your preparation process to make sure you're properly focused. Talk a little bit about study approach, also exam site strategies itself, literally sitting at the exam center and what you may experience, encounter, and how to deal with that. And then we're going to talk a bit about Prometric Testing, which is the organization that provides the centers where all of you will go and sit for the CPA exam itself. So, should I take the CPA exam? Well, clearly the financial rewards that you get out of becoming a CPA are fantastic. I mean, there are studies, many different studies that literally can put you at $1.5 million more over your career as an accountant. Quite frankly, I think it's even considerably more than that. And I also think with the environment in which you will all be participating, that is working at firms and corporations, we have something going on right now that 15% of the current CPA exams in the marketplace will be filtering out and retiring. So I believe that there'll be a bigger demand for you folks, and I think even the rewards that we currently experience are only going to increase over time. Credibility. This is really a key element. I always make a joke and say this: the CPA exam supersedes your GPA. So that is one of the key elements that all of us in the profession look at to determine if somebody has the core competencies to practice in our industry. So credibility is a key. Now, when I want to talk about job requirements, both public versus corporate, I think there's a little misconception here, and I want to clear that up for everybody. And that is, someone says, well, should I take the CPA exam? I'm not necessarily going to go into public accounting. I don't want to practice in that area. I'd rather be in corporate. Well, the public accounting arena, it basically is required. If you do not have your CPA, in some firms you can't be promoted to a senior, and some firms you can't be promoted to a manager. So it really is kind of part of your job requirement. Now, when we flip over to the corporate side, one part of my experience that Jeff didn't mention is that I was also, after working at Price Waterhouse, I was a corporate controller for a couple of years. And my key decision when I was hiring staff was this: did they pass the CPA exam? Now, I want to clear up something even further there. You'll hear things such as, well, am I licensed to practice? Here's the real key issue. The key is passing the CPA exam. I don't care if you decide that you're not going to go into public or get licensed, but the mere fact that you have passed that exam gives me, the corporate person, a benchmark to say this person has put in the time, the effort, and they have achieved the result of passing the CPA exam. So regardless of whether you're going public, it is absolutely essential that you get that in the corporate setting. In addition, this also floats into the governmental arena as well. They are looking for CPAs to be on their staff because it provides them with, once again, a quality staff member that they can rely on. Next, let's talk about your plan. Now, when I talk about a plan, I'm not just talking about a plan for the CPA exam, but when I'm talking about a plan, I'm saying, why do we fail in everything in life? And that could be the CPA exam, it can be our jobs, it can be your relationships. Well, one of those simple answers is we fail to plan. So when I look at your accounting career and life, I look at something I found some 15 years ago, and I use it and have used it in my life in all aspects, business and personal. And there was something called the Harvard study. Now, what they had done in the early 70s is they actually studied the graduating class of Harvard. And what they found out was that 3% of the graduating class actually had written plans that they were going to follow. 20 years later, in a follow-up study, that group of students ended up being worth more than the remaining 97% of the graduating class at Harvard. So the written plan is absolutely essential to everything you're going to do. I talk about a key to any type of events in your life is having a plan. I think our primary reason that we fail is that we don't have a plan. And my final statement there, planning for success is much better than stumbling around to failure. So a plan is an absolutely essential part of what you need to put into action, both for your CPA exam prep, your job, and literally your personal aspects of your life. So I took this to heart many years ago, both in the development of CPA exam preparation as well as my personal life. I really implemented those strategies all along. And it's kind of interesting when we look at planning our exam prep, our college classes, everything, none of us have really ever been given any type of really significant time management strategies or classes that we participate in. So what I did in my world, which happens to be CPA exam prep, is I introduced things into the product that I tried to use that could help our students and whatnot pass the exam. I'm just going to show you a very quick screen here, which is a testament to the way I always view this area. So I literally created in our program something called the Exam Planner. And it is as simple as you tell me what day you want to start studying, then when you're planning on sitting, and then I give you a benchmark that says all of the students before you that passed the exam through a program spent an average of 14 hours a week based on the parameters you set out. So that is a key element where I've taken my approach at planning and implemented that likewise into our program. Now, when I launched that exam planner, one of the things it tells me is exactly what type of time you're going to take to prepare for each section of the exam. So our system has provided me with really true benchmarks, and as you can see here in FAR, we're estimating 130 hours of prep time, so it is considerable. Auditing at 80 hours, the regulations section of the exam at 110, and BEC at about 70 hours. So all told, you're probably spending in excess of between 350 to 400 hours in preparing for all 4 parts of the exam. But know this, the numbers we are giving you are actual benchmarks of students that have gone before you and passed. So this gives you a good measure of what you need to put in order to pass the exam. Let's talk about the educational requirements. This comes up quite a bit. I have provided you with one screenshot here, and I've listed a few states in here for a very specific reason. In the 55 jurisdictions where you can apply and get ready to sit for the exam, unfortunately, each state may have slightly different requirements to sit for the exam. So example here, we have Texas. You're required to have 150 hours. You have to have 30 classes in topics beyond your basic principles. And if we float down to, say, Delaware, you're not required to have 150 hours, but you need 21 hours in accounting. The reason I bring this up is that although the exam is uniform in its technical scope, unfortunately, each individual state has a control as to how many hours you're required to take before you can sit for the CPA exam, and they control that with the number of hours and the various classes they recommend be in that structure as well. I think what I want you to do here is when you're looking at getting ready for your various exam in the state you're looking to register to sit, the site I have down there, nasba.org/exams/CPA exam, that specific link will provide you with each and every state and the various rules that govern each one of those states. So unfortunately, they're not uniform with their requirements in education, so it's important that you research that on your own to make sure you're applying in the correct state and are meeting their requirements. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the CPA exam content spec outline. I'm not going to get into each and every area here, but what I want to do is point out a couple of key things that I think when you're looking at preparing for the exam, you need to keep focused. So we have auditing and attestation. As you see up there, we have 6 categories in which the exam has been designed. But what I want to point out to you is when we get down to financial accounting and reporting, for those of you still in school, a number of universities that I have worked with, they do not require governmental accounting, not-for-profit accounting classes in their core curriculum. It's not required. It's an elective. And the reason I wanted to point this out to you is to make sure that when you're looking at financial accounting and reporting, as you can see there, those two sections in governmental and not-for-profit can comprise 16 to 24% of your score on the FAR section of the CPA exam. So I encourage you, if you have an opportunity, take advantage of classes offered at your university in the governmental area. Now, of course, having said that, it is in the preparation program, we actually go through that process of teaching you these subjects, focusing you on what's going to appear on the exam from them. But nonetheless, it does not have, it doesn't have a negative impact to have that core competency that you would get from a university-type program. So in FAR, I just wanted you to focus quickly on that as a key step that you may want to take when you're getting ready for your final classes this year or next. Now, in regulation, once again, I want to point out the importance of the taxation area. Once again, a lot of universities will offer you individual tax, corporate tax, but some of those are not necessarily in their core requirements. Individual may be. But as you look at these four categories of tax, they are comprising 60% of the regulation score on the CPA exam. So once again, if you have an opportunity, make sure you take advantage of multiple tax classes that may be offered by your university to make sure you're well prepared for that section of the exam. A quick note on scoring. 75 is pass, and unfortunately you can actually receive a 74 and fail the exam. But once again, the objective here is they want to get some type of core competency that you have the knowledge to enter into the profession. You can pass one section at a time, and the objective, of course, is you need to pass all four parts within an 18-month period. Now, how that works is once you pass your first section, you then have 18 months to wrap up your remaining sections. I think this is an absolutely comfortable and doable time frame, but once again, given that the exam is in this online setting, it can lead to procrastination. So when you get that part done, immediately begin preparing for your next part. Make sure you're getting registered for that section so that you wrap up the exam in the window that you were allowed, which is 18 months. As far as what and how many parts to take, I think it's really key that if you're preparing for the exam that you just register for 2 parts at a given time. I think that gives you the flexibility you need to fit it into your study schedule. Also, it depends on whether you are working, whether you have time off of school before you're starting. So all those can come into play with that. But once again, I think the approach of 2 at a time is what I would schedule. One of the other key elements is you have to have your education. Then you have to apply with the state or through NASBA. Once you have been approved, you're going to receive something from Prometric as your notice to sit. But it's important to realize that some of these application processes with the various states, and when I say NASBA, NASBA actually handles a number of the state registrations for you. But it can literally be done sometimes in days where you're given approval to go ahead and contact Prometric to schedule your exam. But others can take as much as 6 to 8 weeks. So I'd be real careful when you're looking at your planning process in the state you are in to make sure you've researched that to find out the estimated time it will take you to get through that registration process. Another key point, there are only certain months in which you can sit, so this is key in your planning process itself. So the exam is, as you see in the green, is offered in January, February. We have the 4 months, March, June, September, and December, which are called the dark months, so there's no examinations giving during those windows. So you can sit for 1 all the way up to 4 sections in a given window if you'd like. Once again, my strategy is to look at achieving 2 sections in a given window. In the event you do fail, because if you take it, say, in the first week of January, you literally could get your notice within 2 weeks that you have passed or failed. But you cannot retake a section that you have failed in that same window. It has to be deferred to a subsequent window. So I think this is another key element in your planning process, looking at whether you're going to be working, whether you have time off, and then take a look at those windows of July, August, say if you're getting out of school next spring, and you want to load up and make sure you knock out a couple of your sections in that window. Just a quick screenshot. This is what you receive from for Prometric. This is your notice to schedule. Then you contact Prometric with all this relevant information. Now, the next area, I want to talk about the exam format. Once again, there are so many things that come into play in your preparation and strategies. So when we look at the exams, as you can see here, all 4 sections are listed across the top. Exam length varies slightly, so auditing 4, BEC 3, FAR 4, and regulation 3. What I want to point out is the distribution on the exam. So in the multiple choice categories on 3 sections, auditing, FAR, and reg, 60% of your exam is multiple choice. Now, in the task-based simulation, we're seeing in auditing, FAR, and reg, it's 40%. Now, a very quick answer to what task-based simulations are, they're really kind of like long problems, but they're broken up with several different tasks that you're required to work on. And the unique section here is BEC, which is the only location where you're going to be required to write essays. So I'm going to show you another slide that gets into some of those details, but 15% of the BE score is essays, and the remaining 85% is multiple choice. One thing before I jump off of here, when I talk about the area of the CPA exam where we have multiple choice and task-based simulations, I find that a number of students will just try to do whatever they can do minimally to prepare for the exam. They'll get some books, or they'll go on eBay or whatnot and grab some old materials. And one of the key things you have to understand is that what you do in practice, you do in the game, and you're going to have to practice full CPA exams. Now, once again, when I look at the preparation that I like to work for students, is that's something that just automatically, by default, is built into a program. So when the student goes through their exam plan, it tells them what they should be doing each day. And then there's the simulated exam that they're going to work on. So simply by clicking that, the student sees the actual instructions that you would see at Prometric. As you see here, we have a simulated exam. It has 3 testlets and a simulation including 7 task-based sims. This is the actual instructions that you'll receive at the Prometric Testing Center. So it's important that you, as you prepare, make sure that you're using a program that has given you every tool necessary to make sure when you walk in that exam center, you are prepared to take that test. A couple of screenshots here on the actual look and feel. Now, this is not any of our programmers. This is actually the AICPA interface that you're going to be required to use at Prometric. So this is a sample of the multiple choice questions. As you see, there's a little timer that pops up, and you have to work through each question, no ABCD, kind of a unique way to look at questions. And then the other major component of the exam is what we call task-based simulations. As I mentioned earlier, 40% of 3 parts of your exam will have this as a key element in your score. So what do they look like? Well, here's what they look like. Some of them are as simple as a question. It pops up with a list that you can take a look at and say, well, here's the question they're asking. What do I believe is the correct choice? You simply click on it, and it pops right in here next to your arrow and indicates here's your selection. So these aren't really that tricky, but they are unique that you need to have practice in these before you actually walk into the exam center. There are also some other unique task-based simulations. Some of those include a research project where you literally are given a question and have to research. And also, say, in the FAR section of the CPA exam, you're going to experience questions where you have to enter numerical values. But they are all set up in this same identical format. Okay, let's talk for a few minutes about exam sequence. I'd like to talk about what I call the big rock theory. I learned this many years ago. And what it really deals with is anything in your life. Literally, you have certain things that you just don't want to do, and you run off and do something that's easier. Now, with the big rock theory, when I look at the CPA exam, you must approach the section that is going to give you the most difficulty, and you have to tackle that first. The reason is quite simple. If you take sections that you're more comfortable with and pass easier, remember you have an 18-month window to get this done in. So it's more important that you tackle the big rock, the area that you find the most challenge with, and get that done first. Now, I have a note here, and I say the exception, BEC. Now, I know a lot of students will run off to do BEC because it has a slightly better pass rate than the other sections, but I do want to explain something to you. BEC, as I mentioned earlier, is the one section where you have 3 written essays. Remember, no task-based simulations, just 3 essays. Now, unfortunately, the essays that they are throwing at the students frequently come from topics tested in financial accounting and reporting and the auditing section of the exam. So my suggestion to all of you is to defer BEC to your last section, and the big rock, I would say, more often than not, would be your financial accounting and reporting section. So that is the key sequence that I would use when approaching the CPA exam. Okay, we're going to talk about some other strategies, some techniques that are really important to understand. That deals with what we call pass rates and pre-test questions. So let's take a look at what the exam pass rates look like. Now, to give you a perspective, these pass rates back 15 years ago were probably floating in the 15 to 22% range. So as we see the pass rates, this is the entire 2012. And over here in the far right column, I have a cumulative. So as you see, every section is knocking on a 50% level. So the reason I present this to you is that it's important to understand that the pass rates are pretty high. So if you get out there and prepare properly for it, you should be able to knock these out in relatively short order. So don't hesitate and be fearful, because in this number we're looking at, I can tell you there's a whole lot of people that are not out there preparing properly for this exam. They're just giving it a shot, and as a result, they're not passing and ultimately have to come back and prepare for it properly. So with pass rates this high, it is an exam that's very achievable in a very short time frame. This is the next key area that I think you need to take a look at. Now, what we're talking about here is the types of questions on the exam. And you see the left-hand column, we're looking at multiple choice questions. And down below we have task-based simulations. And I want to go to the second column here called, under classification, we have something called operational. And then we have something called pre-test. Now, what's kind of interesting is, let's just take a look at the auditing column. And do you realize that all of the work you've done in your program boils down to 90 multiple choice questions? That's it. And 75 questions is all that is being used to determine whether or not you're going to be passing the auditing section, at least in the multiple choice area. Under task-based sims, the same scenario. You're going to have 7 tasks that you need to work, but one of those is a pre-test. So what that really boils down to is that pre-test questions are not scored. So in each of these sections, you see that you're only being judged on 75 questions. So when you're sitting for the CPA exam, a very simple strategy is to realize that when a question pops up that you really have no idea what it is, where it came from, you've gone through college classes, you've gone through your exam preparation through a professional program, and these strange questions pop up, the odds are those are pre-test questions. So as you can see here, in FAR audit, you're only being judged on 75 multiple choice questions that are key, and literally 15 of the 90 are questions that will not even be graded. Likewise, over here in this far right-hand column, I have BEC. And once again, those are essays. Remember, we don't have task-based sims. But even one of those essays is really just a pre-test question. They're floating topics out there to see what type of base knowledge the students that are sitting for the exam have on given topics. So it's a critical item in getting ready for the exam, and also when you're sitting in the exam center itself. Okay, a couple of very quick comments. When you get to an exam center as you're planning out your CPA exam prep, I suggest you allocate the minimum time to multiple choice questions. The reason is really simple, is you get through your multiple choice with minimum time, which usually is adequate, but experiencing those task-based simulations are a little more cumbersome, and they can be just a little more challenging, so we want to make sure that you don't spend too much time on multiple choice and you allow yourself adequate time for the task-based simulations. Case study. Well, here's what you might experience at the exam. Literally spoke to students in the last month or so, and here's what they would experience. They sat down and they got their first testlet, 30 multiple choice questions. They said, boy, that was easy. Went through my first 30, it was a piece of cake. Then the second testlet popped up, and they started getting very nervous. They said, oh my gosh, I swear I had 15 IFRS questions. Well, the reality is what was occurring to those students is they had done very well on the first multiple choice testlet. And then the second testlet was starting to throw out the pre-test questions that they are testing, to see what your base knowledge is. So the students can get very rattled thinking, wow, all these questions are appearing from this topic and I'm not familiar with these. Well, the reality is you're probably doing very well on the exam, but that's why they're throwing this big pile of pre-test questions in a separate testlet. So you have to be prepared for that type of experience when you're at the exam center. Just a little FYI, the student that experienced that said, oh my gosh, I didn't know what was happening in the second testlet, they ended up scoring a 92 on the exam. So it really is kind of an exam strategy that you need to be aware of, and that's why I wanted to point that out to you. Okay, let's have a little fun. Prometric Testing Center. This is the location, most of them have this similar type of check-in where you as a candidate will have to go to register. And I wanted to throw just a few quick rules up here just so you're aware of these. If you're preparing for the exam in the next 6 months, you need to make sure that you have 2 types of ID. That can be driver's license, passports. It also could be a credit card. There's several items that they allow you to bring. Everybody's assigned a locker because you can bring absolutely nothing into the exam site. You have photo identification, fingerprint scans. You have to empty your pockets of everything, and they have metal detector scans because recently they added that no guns can be brought into the Prometric Testing Center, so apparently somebody did that. But I had a little shot for you that I want to show you. This is literally what you will be required to do at the exam center is empty your pockets out and actually pull your pockets out and show the person at the center that you have nothing in there that you're going to be bringing into the testing center. Another thing that you as students may not be used to, and that is most of your exams include paper pencil. I know there's a lot of exams nowadays that you're doing online. But when you go to the exam center, there are no pencils, there is no paper. They have something called note boards. They give you a special marker. And once you're done filling out or using that note board, you can request some additional ones, so you have to walk out of the exam center. So once again, it's a completely unique experience than you have gone through in your various college classes. So it's more psychologically being prepared for a unique experience. There is an allocation when you walk in to sit for the exam. So you're sitting for auditing, you have a 4-hour exam, where they're going to give you the exam plus 30 minutes. And they require you to go through a set of instructions and surveys that you also have to get through in order for you to be theoretically completing the exam. But even these are really important in that you must complete these instructions within the time parameter that they give you when you start your actual exam itself. If you extend beyond it, literally the exam can be shut off and you're not allowed to continue on with the exam. So these are things that you just need to be fully aware of and prepared for. And on the Prometric site, you will find information and some videos that will provide you information and give you some guidance on those instructions and things you need to be aware of. I always tell students to take a ride to the Prometric site that you're going to be sitting at. Just drive, see what the time frame is at the time of the exam that you were scheduled. Make sure there's adequate parking, that you can get there a half hour early, just to physically see where you're going, as I do in the software design, is to make sure you're experiencing the Prometric Center experience. So when you walk in, it's nothing new and nothing to rattle you. So I have a suggested study approach. Number one, key, follow a plan. You have to absolutely lay out a specific plan, and you have to stick to that plan. The other thing is work all the questions in the exam format. Any practice questions you can work, make sure you work them. Final key is sometimes we do really well on a subject-by-subject basis when we're working through 20 questions on accounts receivable, and at a point you get very good at it. But remember, on the CPA exam, the question topics, as you saw, you have 75 key questions that are going to be graded in financial accounting and reporting. Now, that includes intermediate, advanced, governmental accounting. And so you're going to have to be adaptable to switch from topic to topic. So it's really critical that you take full practice exams, and not necessarily just one. I would build in at least 2 or 3 in my personal preparation for getting ready for the exam. Get used to sitting down at a computer for 4 hours straight and making sure you're comfortable with that process. And then once you have completed those exams, the key is review areas of weakness. It's kind of funny, but students have a tendency to review topics they know best, and one of the key things that will cause you to fail is not addressing the areas that you are weakest at. Many are weak in governmental accounting, they're weak in deferred in the tax area, in financial deferred tax. So these are areas that you need to address and just work through so you gain a minimal competency in those areas so they don't cause you to go from a 75 to a 74. So some final thoughts. Pass rates. We just talked about those, and those are literally 50% a section. So you shouldn't be frightened at all of the exam, 50% pass rates. Secondly, you have gone through your college classes. So you have taken virtually every topic that's going to be on the exam. It's not like they made up a whole lot of new ones. So your college classes should have given you a core foundation to prepare. And the third element is, and I strongly encourage everybody to do this, not just because we provide these type of preparation programs, but the prep course guidance is critical in that faculty are lecturing and they're focusing on the key topics, and the questions are in the database to help you practice those areas. And the exam questions themselves are kind of unique and have a unique twist to them. So if nothing else, it's just getting experience with the way questions are presented and the areas you need to focus on. You're not going to master 100% of the CPA exam topics. That's just not going to happen. So what you want to make sure is that you're mastering the majority of the key topics that they're going to present to you on the CPA exam. So that is my suggested guidance and my final thoughts on your preparation for the exam.
Mike, this is Jeff Phillips. So I'll let you catch your breath for a second. And thank you for that outstanding overview of why we should take it, right, and also just what to be thinking about. We have had a ton of questions come through, and so what I'd like to do now, Mike, is bring in Jeff Johnson, Regional Director with CPAexcel, and Jeff is going to help facilitate some of the Q&A that came in. So, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you, and you can ask Mike the questions, okay?
Sure, great, and a lot of great questions from the students here. Mike, I guess there's a number of them. I'll start with, once you pass the CPA exam, does it expire?
No, that's the great thing about the CPA exam, even for an old guy like me. Once I pass that exam, I'm done taking the CPA exam and will never have to do it again. The only thing that's relevant when you have passed your CPA exam and you want to continue to be active in your state societies, even if you're working at a corporation, and you just want to take the minimum CPE units that the state that you're in is requesting that you take so that you stay in good standing. And also, if you work at a firm, of course, there will be mandatory CPE units that the firm will be putting you through as well. So your CPA itself, passing the exam, never expires. So myself, I passed the CPA exam, worked at Price Waterhouse, was at a corporation for about a 4-year period, although I was still a member of the AICPA or the Illinois CPA Society. I really hadn't taken a lot of CPE units, so what I did was then went back after 4 years, took my catch-up CPE units, so I got back in good standing as a CPE with all of my required CPE. So bottom line, never expires.
Okay. Mike, you mentioned that 75 was a passing score and 74 was a failing score. Do employers look at your specific exam score when they're looking to hire you?
No, absolutely not. So the great thing with the CPA exam, as I say, there's 4 sections. You get a 75 on each. That's 300. That's a perfect bowling score, and that's a perfect score on the CPA exam. And I'll tell you a very quick story. Years ago, you guys are pretty young, and I'm sure you've heard of the firm. It was called Arthur Anderson, and a gentleman by the name of Arthur Young, and they both sat in Illinois. And back then, they actually had a book that showed each of your scores on each one of your attempts and what you failed. And so even back then, they were published and available, and unfortunately, Anderson and them never did pass the exam the first time. Here's the good news. It's all secretive. If you pass the exam, that's it. Now, the only people that will be happy to have their information released are the handful of people that are the Elia Watzels Award winners, and those people like to, of course, say that because that gives them a little feather in their bonnet. But as far as that, no one will ever know your exam scores.
Mike, does the exam change, and if so, how often?
Okay, the exam does change, and it changes every year, and I'll tell you why it changes. For instance, just recently, starting in July 1st, we had the Clarity Project in auditing that floated into the CPA exam. So anytime there's any type of major changes in the profession, those are going to float through the CPA exam. Another reason it will be changing is things such as, a little over a year back, we had the codification of standards. So that affects the research, excuse me, that you would do on the exam as to how information is organized in the professional literature. Things such as the tax laws, as you know, change frequently. So we could have a major change in our tax law this fall. So what we're going to be required to do then is adapt that to the CPA exam and include that in the new content. And it's also important as we change topics, or like IFRS, it's out there, but don't get intimidated by that at all. But as they introduce those topics, we have to design questions that we feel would be appropriately tested in those areas to make sure the candidates are well prepared. So it does change, but once again, it changes based on the professional literature and things that are moving through the various organizations that are looking at making changes to our accounting approach.
Mike, when you're taking the exam, it's a 3 or 4 hour exam depending on the section. Are you allowed to take a break to use the restroom or get a glass of water?
Yes. You can take a break, and unfortunately, the time on the exam keeps running. Now, that doesn't mean I would not take a break. Even in fact, when I sat for the exam, many years ago, I literally at a point I had finished my whole pile of multiple choice questions, and I just got up, just took a walk, went to the washroom, just kind of got out for a few minutes, and once again, that's good for you. At Prometric, you have a timer. You can leave the exam. Then you have to do all the various fingerprinting, and they have to see that you have nothing in your hands when you leave, and then you have to re-enter and have your finger re-scanned. So there's a few more procedures that occur at Prometric, but you absolutely should take breaks. If I was sitting there, I suspect I have a 4-hour exam. I finished my first testlet. I might just, okay, nerves are settling down. I might just take a quick break, go out, and then, come back in. So don't be afraid to take it, but certainly don't take a half-hour break, just a few minutes to get away.
Mike, once you pass the CPA exam, a lot of jurisdictions have an experience requirement. I know it's different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but can you talk a little bit about achieving the experience requirement?
Okay. So yes, they do have differing experience requirements. And once again, I do want to make sure that everybody's clear on this, and that is, if you never decide to be licensed to practice, you can work at a corporation and never actually be a licensed CPA, but you have passed the CPA exam. So that's once again, I want to point that out because there's confusion that if I went to a corporation, how do I get licensed? Well, the license is really used primarily when you're with an auditing firm and ultimately signing audit opinions. That's the critical nature of licensing. So as far as experiencing requirements, some states have, generally speaking, it's no more than 2 years working under a CPA. So even if you're at a corporation, you can work, and as long as you're reporting to a CPA, that is usually considered part of that educational requirement. And some states, if you have a 150-hour state that you're required to have 150 before you sit, some of those states only require 1 year of experience before you can theoretically get your license to practice.
Can you talk a little bit about the CPAexcel program as to pricing, repeat fees, and how does that compare to Becker or other competitors?
Okay. Okay, let's see. I'll take that. I guess pricing is an important issue. The pricing for our program, it runs approximately for students is about $1,500. And that allows the student to not only get access to all the content online, it also continues to be updated for the students until they pass the CPA exam. And there are no additional repeat fees or any costs that are associated with it. And it's really, and also the program works in an environment that allows a student to work on a PC, a Mac, online, offline, synchronized with our iPads, our smartphones, where you literally have access to 6,000, 7,000 questions on an iPhone if you want to work that way. So all of those are included with the program, and there are no update or repeat fees. Other programs are probably, the major course is probably in a range closer to 3,000. So I think the value that we provide you and the number of firms and those working with us are proof of our quality product.
You mentioned the registration process of just taking 2 parts. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about the registration process and the timeline? How soon before you actually want to take the exam should you actually start registering?
Well, first off, I think it's really important to understand that there's kind of if you kind of go with a process and you back up. So if you're looking to sit, say, August 1st, well, it can take up to 30 to 45 days preceding that to be able to request that date at the Prometric Testing Center. So that's the first step. So we start with when we want to sit, and then literally you have to start backing up. So I would back up 30 to 45 days prior to the date I want to sit. So at that point, I in effect want to have my notice to schedule, and that is what I will receive from the AICPA. So with that in mind, then you have to back up from that point, and I would say somewhere in the area of 4 to 6 weeks preceding that date is when I would want to actually have submitted my application, submitted my transcripts to the state that I'm planning to sit through. So all in all, if you targeted your exam date, I would estimate that your study time is, well, let's back up. So if it's August 1st, I would say that I would be ready by somewhere around June 1st to be requesting my date, and then I'd back up another 6 weeks from there to make sure I'm turning in my registration information.
And then a lot of questions on moving from state to state. So if you start out in one state and then you move to another one, is it possible to transfer your CPA license from one state to the other? And in addition, if you've passed 1 or 2 parts in one state, what should you do if you move to another state?
Well, those are, a short answer to those is that if you pass in one state, even if you move to another state, you can continue to sit in the other state. Register as if you're still, say you moved to California, but you lived in Illinois and you passed 2 parts, you can still continue to register, quote unquote, as an Illinois candidate. And once you do pass all parts, there is a process that you can go to that transfers your information to the new state that you are in. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Actually, Jeff is very familiar with something called the Mobility Project. Jeff, do you want to expand on that just a brief bit? Yeah,
mobility is something that the majority of jurisdictions have passed, where if you're a CPA in one state, they will allow you to practice in another state. So, for instance, if you're a CPA in Illinois, but you have a client in Iowa, you can actually work as a CPA in Iowa to meet those clients' needs. And just about every state has passed mobility. That being said, so you can work in a different state as a CPA. That being said, if you are a CPA in one state and you are moving to another state, you plan to move there for quite some time, you should probably simply contact that state board and get your license moved to the new state. Once you've passed the exam is the same in every state. So once you've passed the exam, you are CPA in each state. However, you do need to pass your new state's requirements as it comes to job experience.
And occasionally in some states you are required to take a different ethics test. So something you need to be aware of.
Mike, you showed that there were some written communication questions in the BEC section. Is there any special way a student should prepare for the written questions on the exam?
Yeah, well, certainly what they're really looking for is, it's kind of a tricky area, because that's why I suggested that you take BEC last, because some of the topics that they present in the essays are coming from financial accounting and reporting. In fact, you can experience a question that talks about pensions. So all of a sudden, the student can get quite intimidated if they, say, took BEC first, and in BEC, we're talking about topics like managerial and IT and budgeting, and so it is not the same type of topics that necessarily appear in the essays. So the one way to make sure you're prepared for the essay part is to take that section after you've taken auditing and financial accounting and reporting. So once again, you're a little more comfortable with the topic. So it's not that the topic itself is being excessively tested in the essay, but it does require you to communicate based on the question they have presented to you. So what they're really looking at in the written portion is they're looking for organization, clarity, proper use of business language. So it isn't necessarily the topic itself, but if you're unfamiliar with or not as comfortable with the topic, it can put you into a little tailspin and get you really nervous about what you're trying to write and communicate. So those are the basic guidelines that the examiners are looking for. Once again, proper written business communication, clarity, organization. So I guess if you ran into, if you ended up choosing to take it first, I would just make sure that, if nothing else, I organized my thoughts in a sequential manner. I responded to the question in the proper sequence, and I used proper business language.
We've had a lot of questions from international students on whether they're qualified to sit for the exam. And I wanted to point out that CPAexcel does have a free service that you can contact us regarding the school you've gone to internationally and which jurisdiction to actually sit for the exam. And the person to contact, her name is Leslie Ann Rogers, and her email address I'll give you is la.rogers, R-O-G-E-R-S, at CPAexcel.com. la.rogers, R-O-G-E-R-S, at CPAexcel.com. Mike, I know you covered it, but there were a lot of questions on the, can you maybe review the ordering? Students trying to determine which part to take first, second, third, and fourth.
Okay. I think I've already made it clear which part I would take last, and I would take BEC last. And I know a lot of people are going to jump around and say, oh, take that, that's easiest. But I would take that last for the reason just described earlier. Probably the next one I would take is, you know, financial accounting is a big section, and we're talking about a lot of tricky subjects. You know, we have intermediate, advanced accounting type topics, deferred taxes. We also have, you know, 20% of that test is governmental. So the reality is, I think the major section that somebody should go after first is financial accounting, FAR. The second section I would go after is regulation, which is tax and law. I believe auditing is a much more doable section, and some of the information from that you've covered in the FAR section of the exam will be relevant in auditing. So auditing would be my third choice, and then BEC would be last. That is the way I would approach it. I assume for most, as I say, the big rock theory, the big rock is FAR. And once you get that one off your back, I think they get easier and easier, and make sure that you're wrapping up within your 18-month window.
Okay, we're getting up against the hour here, so let me go ahead and give you my email address. If we did not get to your question, you can certainly contact me. My name is Jeff Johnson. My email is Jeff, J-E-F-F, .Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N, at CPAexcel.com, Jeff.Johnson at CPAexcel.com. And with the what, we'll turn it over to Jeff from CollegeFrog.
Jeff and Mike, thank you. And before everybody jumps off, I know we're bouncing up against the hour. Two quick housekeeping items. Jeff, there's a lot of questions, maybe some that didn't get answered. Are you available to stay online and just answer the questions in the boxes,
Sure.
the ones that didn't answer? Okay, so for you students who are on the call and you submitted a question that didn't get answered, don't close out of the webinar just yet. While we're in the call, Jeff and their team will answer your questions and stay on, because we still have quite a few questions. I know we're bumping up against the end of the hour, but I did want to tell you about one exciting thing that CPAexcel has offered. And I may get you to expound on this a little bit, but CPAexcel this is from our website, is going to offer free access to the accounting course tutor for all CollegeFrog members to help prepare for their accounting midterms and finals this semester. So they have 13 course titles that are available, including auditing, corporate tax, individual tax, governmental advanced accounting, managerial, etc. So you can actually access that by going to meetthefirmsweek.com, our website, for the event, and look on the main page, look under the students heading, and about 4 or 5 bullet points down, you'll see a link there where you can register for some of these free course advice and some of the tutor sessions. And also, CPAexcel is going to give away 2 full CPAexcel CPA Review course scholarships to students at the end of Meet the Firms Week. So we're going to draw 2 random students. That's roughly an $1,800 value, and so because it includes the video gold medal course with the ebooks. So an outstanding offer. I didn't want to end the call without first telling everybody about that. And again, you can learn more at meetthefirmsweek.com.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up.
Go ahead.
I would just like to add one comment there for the students that are obviously still in college. As he said, you can access, say if you're taking an auditing class, you can access auditing, and literally you're going to get the entire program, including all the lectures, the exam questions, task-based sims, the simulated exams, flashcards. All of that is actually available to you, and that's available to you through the end of the semester.
Outstanding. And last question I had for you, Mike. You spent an entire hour telling us about the exam. And you did get a chance to talk a little about CPAexcel, but where can students go to find out more information to learn about the different products and options they have to prep for the CPA exam through CPAexcel?
Yeah, I would say obviously the easiest to do is just go to CPAexcel.com. And that should provide you with great information and resources about the program and what we provide to our students. So I think most of your questions will be answered there. If you have questions, you can contact our customer service folks as well. And I guess I can throw that out. That's 888-884-5669. And they'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Fantastic. So we'll stay online on the online portion to answer the rest of your questions. If you'd like to learn more information about the free accounting tutor for your accounting coursework this semester, go to meetthefirmsweek.com, scroll down, look under students. You'll see that offer from CPAexcel. There's a link there. You can register. You can pick your course that you want to get tutored in and select that course. That is an outstanding and generous offer, which we really appreciate.
And by the way, your teachers will use those types of questions on your exams.
That is awesome. That's great. But, well, this has been extremely informative. Mike, any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, the big one to me always is to make sure that the student understands passing the CPA exam is critical no matter what career you're going to go in, whether you're going to go into public, corporate, etc. It is just a benchmark you need to get. I look at it like, well, if you go to law school, you sit for the bar exam. So if you're going to go through the work of going through a program in accounting, you absolutely must get your CPA. It's just the way it is. So I encourage you all to make sure you get out there and get that done, and don't procrastinate and wait 3 years, because trust me, when you're out working in the real world, you're not going to have a whole lot of time to jump in and do this. So take advantage of your early stages in your career if you can, and make sure you tackle this thing right away. It's a big rock. Get it done.
You got to get it out of the way. Well, this has been incredible, Mike and Jeff. We thank you so much. We've had a lot of great feedback come through. We really appreciate everybody on the call as well. We'll be following up with an email to everybody later on today that will have that offer link that I mentioned earlier for the free tutoring. Secondly, there's plenty more webinars to attend this week. You can go to our website and click on the webinars link to register for any of those. And I believe that's it. So we'll stay online and answer some of these questions after the phone portion ends. Thank you, everyone, for staying on this call and for kicking off Meet the Firms Week with an outstanding session. Have a great week. Thanks again, Mike and Jeff. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.